So, as I come from a Russian-speaking country, from Belarus, once on YouTube I came across a video of a blogger, traveler, who was sharing his experience of visiting Myanmar and staying in some Buddhist monastery and having some experience that really changed his life. I was surprised because I also traveled in Myanmar and I also had my experience with Tabarwa, which also changed my life. So I decided to watch that video when I found out that he was also referring to Tabarwa.
Tôi đến từ Belarus, nghe Belarus. Và đây là một trong những đoạn video của một YouTuber. Vị này đã đi du lịch và chia sẻ lại những kinh nghiệm của mình khi đến đất nước Phật giáo Miến Điện, cũng như là đã nương tựa ở một số những ngôi tự viện Phật giáo, trong đó có trung tâm Tabarwa, những nơi mà sau đó vị này tin rằng đã thay đổi cuộc đời và nhận thức của anh ta. Đối với cô Katarina, cô cũng rất ngạc nhiên bởi vì cô cũng đã từng đi du lịch ở đất nước Miến Điện và cũng đã từng đến nương nhờ và phụng sự tại trung tâm Tabarwa, và có những điểm cũng thay đổi cuộc đời của cô ấy. Cho nên khi mà xem cái đoạn YouTuber này thì cô cảm thấy có sự mối liên hệ đặc biệt. Và bây giờ thì cô muốn chia sẻ bằng cách là sẽ dịch từ tiếng Nga Belarus qua tiếng Anh, và chúng ta sẽ được nghe phần thông dịch qua tiếng Việt.
So just yesterday I started showing this video to share with Sayadaw the experience of a volunteer who lived in Tabarwa for 9 months during the time of COVID, and he is not a practitioner, he is just a traveler, but the experience that he had while staying in Tabarwa really brought him understanding of some of the teaching of Sayadaw, although he never met Sayadaw. So Sayadaw decided to share this video with all of you, and he hasn't seen by himself everything yet. I will try to read. I made the script of the video because it is in the Russian language, and I made the script and translated it into English. So I will try to follow with the speaker on the video and just tell you what he is saying.
Ngày hôm qua thì tôi đã đến và xin ý kiến của Ngài Thiền sư về việc chia sẻ lại đoạn video ghi nhận bởi một vị YouTuber này. Trong thời Covid thì vị đã đến và làm tình nguyện tại trung tâm Tabarwa trong thời gian 9 tháng. Đây, vị này thì không phải là người thực hành thiền, chỉ là một người đi du lịch thôi. Nhưng mà trong cái thời gian sống và nương nhờ tại trung tâm Tabarwa Miến Điện, vị đã có cơ hội được tiếp xúc với một số những lời dạy của Sayadaw, và điều này cũng thay đổi nhận thức của vị đấy. Và sau khi tôi trình bày với Ngài Thiền sư, Ngài đã quyết định cho tôi cơ hội này để có thể chia sẻ với quý hội chúng, mặc dù là Ngài Thiền sư chưa từng xem qua đoạn video này. Tôi đã quyết định sẽ cố gắng thông dịch lại bằng ngôn ngữ, và cũng như bây giờ lại sẽ lên trình bày trước hội chúng bằng tiếng Anh, và theo cái mạch của đoạn video clip mà vị tác giả đã làm nên.
Bada, can you find the beginning part of the text on the Alice computer? Because I was not sending it on the phone. I don't have it either. It was only on when I started translating first using her computer. or say it automatically? No?
Yes.
You don't have it?
No, I have it.
No? Can I have it?
Yes.
But then it means when we watch the video, Vietnamese translation, we cannot do. Wait a minute.
Bên anh bên đó thứ hai mà bên đó là bên anh.
Cái này là tiếng Nga này.
À, tiếng Nga.
Oh, there might be a double of the same thing, like of your first edition and second edition. Mhm. Mhm. Uh-huh. Just adjust. Mhm. Mhm. Okay, 55 pages. So we will start the video just not from the very first second, but from little later. And before, the guy is telling that he is a traveler. He travels all around the world just to discover countries, to share experience. And then he says that he is also interested in Buddhism, but this time when he came to a Buddhist monastery, we may all have association with Buddhist monastery, like monks, meditation, that they walk barefoot. But he gave the title to his video. Can I see the title of the video, just to say it correctly? So he gave the title to the video, Death, Sex, Alcohol, I Will Never Be the Same. So he says he had his experience in the Buddhist monastery and nobody would associate death, sex, alcohol with a Buddhist monastery. Because his visit to this monastery changed his understanding and his expectations too. He didn't expect that he would see corpses of dead people every day. He would work with HIV patients and he would indulge in alcohol more than before. And that also the concept of sex would change for him a lot. So we can start from here, but if Sally wants to translate.
Chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu với lại những giây đầu tiên của đoạn phim. Thì ở những giây đầu tiên thì đây là phần giới thiệu của chính tác giả. Tác giả giới thiệu rằng tác giả là một trong những người đi du lịch và du lịch vòng quanh thế giới để có thể khám phá ra những cái quốc gia cũng như là có thể học hỏi chia sẻ những kinh nghiệm. Và bên cạnh đó thì đã tìm thấy được cái sự thú vị quan tâm đến đạo Phật, bởi vì do đến và nương nhờ ở tại một số những tu viện Phật giáo, có cơ hội được tiếp xúc với chư tăng và với góc nhìn rằng chư tăng cũng là một trong những người hành thiền, chư tăng đi khất thực với chân trần và vân vân. Và tựa đề của thước phim chính là cái chết dành cho Cái chết dành cho quan hệ tình dục, cho rượu bia, và tôi sẽ không bao giờ trải nghiệm lần nữa giống như vậy. Bởi vì do sống ở tu viện, các tu viện Phật giáo, cho nên ít nhiều gì nó đã làm thay đổi đến nhận thức của chính tác giả cũng như là thái độ sống của anh ta. Thật ra anh ta cũng chưa bao giờ mong muốn rằng có cái sự thay đổi như vậy. Nhưng mà qua những lần chạm vào cái thấy biết, như là anh ta đã có thể gặp gỡ những bệnh nhân nhiễm HIV, cũng như là có những cái suy nghĩ trăn trở về việc sử dụng rượu bia và chất có cồn. Và bên cạnh đó thì những cái quan điểm về quan hệ tình dục cũng là một trong những điều thay đổi cái nhận thức, hiểu biết của anh ta lúc bấy giờ.
There will be no more Vietnamese translation now because it will be very fast now.
Okay, so how can I write?
You
can translate later.
later. I give you
So
the text.
later
In,
I will. Okay.
I can give you the text in English, and then you
Okay.
can read. You can tell people that you will not translate anymore,
Okay.
so that they don't wait.
Only after.
Dạ kính thưa quý chư tăng ni hội chúng, thì để cho dễ cho cái việc cái thước phim được đi lại cũng như là phần thông dịch tiếng Anh của dịch giả trên đây thì sẽ không có phần dịch bằng tiếng Việt, và con xin phép được dịch sau.
Next to yourself. I already. Yeah, just choose yourself. Just tell me. So the person in the video speaks quickly. I will try to read quickly. Just wait for my telephone to get it back. Okay. So we can start.
Секс. Когда я туда приехал, у меня тоже были свои ожидания, которые совершенно не оправдались. Я не ожидал, что я буду каждый день видеть трупы, работать там с ВИЧ-инфицированными, что я стану напиваться алкоголем, как никогда раньше в своей жизни.
So I would consume alcohol more than before, and then the concept of sex would change for me a lot. So let's talk about it one by one. No, you just it goes on always. March, February 2020, I was in Nepal. During 1 month, I climbed in the mountains with my good friend without having an idea about what was happening in the world. And in the beginning of March, we come back to Pokhara. You probably know what was happening in the world at that time. Everyone was going crazy. No one could understand anything. The borders were getting closed. There was panic. After Nepal, I wanted to go to Myanmar, the most closed and least popular tourist destination among the countries in Southeast Asia. Also, it was the only country of the region where I have never been before. Moreover, at that moment, I got interested in the philosophy of Buddhism. That's why I couldn't miss the opportunity to visit the country, which was near and open as never before. And as we can see, like never since then, it was never open. The borders were not yet closed. Visas were easy to get. So I couldn't miss that chance. So I rapidly bought my flight from Nepal to Thailand, and from Thailand to Myanmar to the city of Yangon, and 12th of March I arrived in Yangon. Initially, I just planned to stay in this country for the 30 days allowed by my visa, spend a couple of weeks hitchhiking around the country, visiting tourist attractions, and then I could spend 2 weeks in some Buddhist temple to meditate and learn a little more about Buddhism. The first 10 days went great. I'm traveling around the country, which is a very colorful and interesting place with cool people. But after 10 days, the country announced that it was closing its borders and air traffic was fully suspended. At that time, I checked into a hostel. The first couple of days I spent there were great. I was just waiting to see what was going on next. There was no specific news about what we were to do in the country if the borders got closed, how we would stay there legally. In general, everything was unclear. But then, within a week, something very strange happened. First, rumors began to spread among Myanmar people that we, the white people, had brought the virus to Myanmar and we were spreading it around. It was unpleasant, to say the least, and even a little scary, because people started looking at us as skunks and discussed behind our back. And sometimes they would shout at us. Sometimes there might be just a few people along with me on the bus, and everyone would huddle together away from me. Another very important point is that during those days when I was in Yangon, the Myanmar government announced that it would extend visas for all foreigners. Because there were no flights, they would initially issue visas for 3 months. Thus, I decided that it was time to go to a Buddhist monastery. I started looking for options and came across Walkaway Info, where I usually look for all of my volunteer projects. There were quite a few options there, mostly Buddhist meditation centers. But again, can we raise the sound a little bit? Can you raise the sound a little bit? That may be enough. So only one place was accepting people, all other were rejecting, and this place called Tabarwa. They replied and told that I could come, and without any idea about what kind of place it was or what I would be doing there, I just packed my things and went to this monastery the very same day. When I arrived there and entered the main building, the reception, they told me that I had to go through the quarantine. I didn't have many options, especially since I understood that due to the current situation, I'd have to stay in that place for some time, and I was really interested in it. I wanted to stay there to get some experience, so I made up my mind to agree for the quarantine. Not too close? Okay. Anyway, now it's okay. He's speaking now about some advertising also. Let him speak. Let him speak. Like this? Maybe even I
За
try.
первые 2 месяца вы пройдете профориентацию и решите, что у вас лучше получается. Создание сайтов, разработка игр или, например, тестирование IT-продуктов. Какое направление вы бы не выбрали, у вас будет море практики.
He's just giving some advertising.
На реальных задачах от крупных компаний. В итоге вы соберете сильное портфолио к концу обучения. Вы получите навыки, с которыми точно найдете работу. У меня не особо много вариантов, тем более я понимаю, что я останусь в этом месте какое-то продолжительное количество времени, и мне хочется там остаться, мне интересно.
So he was going to stay there for some time. He didn't have many options. This is why he agreed to stay and go through quarantine. During the first days, some more people were coming, foreigners came to that monastery as volunteers too, which seemed strange to him because he was in quarantine, but still other people were joining him. Anyway, I didn't mind, especially since it's much more interesting and fun to be with other people rather than to spend time alone. After 2 weeks, we were released, and like this, I started discovering where I was. So finally we could see what it was, the place, and it wasn't a small Buddhist monastery, but it was a huge place, a village with a population of several thousands of people. So that you can understand what kind of place this is, I'm telling you. The founder of this center, a chief monk, had been a successful businessman in the past in Myanmar, and at some point he got awakened to Buddha nature. The word Buddha is used in the Indo-European languages, including Russian too, and it is used to tell about someone's awakening. So he awoke and sold his entire business. Thus, he built this center. And the main concept of this place is that they accept everyone without any exception. That is, they don't refuse anyone. Well, you yourself understand what kind of people come there. Sick people, homeless, beggars, people who were starving. There is people who simply wouldn't survive outside this center. Some people were also brought there just to die. As in Buddhism, it is considered a good end of the cycle to die within the walls of a Buddhist monastery. In addition to people, homeless dogs and homeless cats were brought there from shelters where they would be euthanized. There were 3 concrete multi-story buildings in the entire village. A 4-story building, and 2 of them, these were clinics, and 1, it was a hostel for foreigners in which all the volunteers lived. On the first floor there was a dining room and utility rooms. On the second floor girls lived. There were rooms with 4 to 6 people in each room. On the third floor, there was a hostel for guys. There we had no partitions, no rooms, just a continuous hall where the beds were arranged like this. He's showing on the video. The space between them was maybe 50 centimeters. So all the fun action would take place on the guys' floor. Girls would come over, we would cook food there, play different games. Well, we just hang out together. Among the dwellers of this hostel, there were only foreigners. That is, entry to the building to locals for Burmese was prohibited. Mostly there were the French, the Italians, I think there were probably about 15 people, the Germans, and as well as travelers from much further away. Well, just from all over the world, from Europe and Mexico and Colombia. But of course, main language was English. And there was a range of age, people from 18 years old, and there were a couple of people over 70. There were a few people over 60, but basically 80% of the volunteers were from 20 to 40, 45 years old. In general, they brought us to this hostel, explained some basic rules, that in that building we can't have sex, we can't drink alcohol, one can't eat meat, and one can't listen to the music without headphones. In principle, such were the rules explained to us, but in fact, I will tell you about this later, these rules were not followed at all. So we consumed alcohol and had sex there, and smoked weed, and listened to loud music, but I'll tell you more about this a bit later. Every evening we gathered in the meditation hall to discuss our activities and make a schedule. That is, organize all the volunteer work. On the first day at the meeting, we, all the new volunteers, introduced ourselves, told a little bit about ourselves, and after that the organization of activities for the next day began. That is, there is a person who just reads aloud a list of activities, for example, building houses. Yes, we need to build 2 houses. People raise their hands. Who wants to do this? Then there is work with patients. Okay, people raise their hands, they put their names down. In general, there were several key points that needed to be resolved during the day, so people volunteered to do, and that group went to carry out the task. And there was a moment when a leading guy announced one of the activities to accomplish, and he called it a diaper party. Actually, I didn't quite understand what it meant. I did not know the meaning of the word diaper. Well, I had never used it in my life, so I did not know what diaper party meant. It's a party, that's it. And still few people raised their hand, that is, they needed 5 people for this, there were only 3 hands raised. I was hesitant, like, well, party, okay, I'm for it. I raised my hand and actually I didn't know what it was until the very end. I only found out about it the next day when we went to the clinic and we entered the building. It was only at that moment that I decided to ask, hey guys, what's the fuss about it? What are we going to do? What kind of party is this? What shall we do? They laughed at me, of course, and were surprised that I didn't know and still agreed. So they said that we would change diapers to everyone. I didn't expect such a turn of events, but it was too late to turn back. After all, I signed up for those diapers. Each of us had a box with all the supplies. There were gloves, of course, and there were diapers, there was powder and wet wipes. There were 4 floors in the clinic. The first floor was a utility room with all the medications. The second, the third, and the fourth were just floors with patients. It wasn't really a clinic in its classical understanding. That is, it is again just a hall without any partitions and beds. There are stacked in lines, only beds, without mattresses, and there on the beds we could see disabled or paralyzed people lying, or people without limbs. That is, most people could move independently and went to the toilet on their own, but there were paralyzed ones too, who needed help to change their diapers. Previously, I had had no experience at all at working with people with physical disabilities. Even with children, I have never worked, or with the elderly. That is, I have never had experience like this at all. Of course, it's very difficult to start this kind of activity. Just imagine people lying there in piles. They had amputated limbs, or paralyzed people were there, and dying people, and those covered with various skin diseases. Plus the smell of their feces, the smell of those patients, and all that instantly falls down on you. Here is the first day of your stay in this place without any advanced preparation. While other guys generally just walk around calmly, They make jokes, they have fun while they're visiting patients, they change diapers, wipe everyone without any sign of discomfort or without any disgust. They just work and nothing other than work. In the end, some guy explained to me how to do all the work, showed me how to turn over the body of a paralyzed person, how to do all the necessary. Remove the diaper, wipe off everything, pour this white powder and dress them up. So little by little I started doing all that. It was very hard, it was very disgusting. There was this gag reflex. I even ran to the toilet and threw up there. On the second day, I came back and continued changing diapers too. So I volunteered for the same job again. I really wanted to overcome this moment of disgust and some discomfort, and so it happened. On the second day, it seemed to me that it was much easier than on the first one. But it will be wrong to say that I liked this activity. Instead of taking your coffee at 7 a.m., I would go change diapers. Later, I did not do this often. That is, I volunteered from time to time when there were not enough people, but I usually did other things. For example, what I really liked was washing people. I'll tell you how it was. We were divided into two groups. The first group were the carriers, that is, people who transported all the patients from their beds to the place where we did the washing. It was usually down there, somewhere near the clinic. There were buckets of water, and the second group of people were those who washed. Usually those were girls who wash and guys who transport. Frankly, I enjoyed this work because it was fun. First, you put a person there on a wheelchair and you drive them. Sometimes you race with other volunteers, so people themselves actually were pleased that some kind of movement, some kind of life was taking place. You're running with them, you joke around. It's sunny and hot, and you pour water on yourself too. You wash people, you take them somewhere else. Everyone is happy, everyone is happy. In general, I really liked it. And the third activity that I did almost every day, 6 days a week, was called patient care. There were people who needed some kind of regular medical care. As a rule, these were either skin diseases, that is, fungal diseases, most often because it is very humid there and people do not go out to the sun. Thus, they develop some kind of fungal formations. And the second very popular one is bed sores. That is, a paralyzed person constantly lies in one position. Such formations begin to appear in one place of their body, then it starts to fester, and that's why the patients need regular treatment. Treating them is not a very complicated procedure. Just change the bandage, wash everything clean, cut out the pus, and apply a new bandage. Usually the same people were engaged in this activity because you need to know your patient. You need to understand how to treat them. So there was no point in changing. And also there were only few people who wanted to do this. We were usually divided into 3 teams. That is, 2 people in a team, 1 person who performs the action itself, that is, treats the wound, cleans everything, cuts out as required. And the second person, this is an assistant, that is, who gives just the tools like scissors and scalpel and all sorts of dressings, bandages, so that everything is sterile. Besides, because of my carpentry skills, I could create some basic furniture like benches, which were always in great demand. From pallets we made them, and tables, some beds, and in general other similar things. I made quite a lot. The hardest were the first 10 days. It took me time to get used to the new reality I found myself in. Getting tattoos here. This is our dog. And in overall, this is our dormitory where I live. I live here. Over here. This is my bed. Things, books, all sorts of them. And what always surprises and amazes me in us people is what kind of adaptive creatures we are. That is, we get used to everything, to any environment, to any circumstances. That's how you are a part of this life, and in no way it seems unnatural to you, neither alien, but absolutely normal. And you live normally. when that feeling of alienation and rejection passes away and you accept the reality, accept the life, then you even get some pleasure from it. I got interested in and started studying some very basic medical things like how to bandage correctly. I started studying about skin diseases and about how to work with paralyzed people, how to turn them over, how to lift them into a chair. I watched videos on YouTube, and in general, little by little, I also learned different things that would have never come to my mind before. Otherwise, I would have never dealt with such issues and would have never happened to be there where I was, studying medicine, working with people. Soon, a week after I had started my work, I saw a corpse for the first time. I and another volunteer were just walking around the village to see our patients, and we had a map of all patients we had to go around for every day. So we came to one man, and he was already lying dead. That is, I had never seen a corpse in my life before, so it was very emotional for me, of course, and very strange that you could see a person a day before. Well, you talked to him, he smiled at you, you changed his bandages, and now he's lying lifeless. What truly struck me. Although my friend reacted to this very dryly, which I didn't really like, he was like, well, that's it, he's dead, let's go. Back then, it seemed to me very cynical and very disrespectful towards that person. But after 2 days, there was another corpse, and then there was another one, and another one, and another. And after some time, I realized that this did not cause me any more emotions, no regret, no sadness, that this was some kind of an ordinary, normal life process. And later, when we went around to see people and I saw them suffering and at the edge of death, I actually wished them to die as soon as possible and to get rid of this life that they no longer enjoyed. And when this happened, when death came, I just felt a relief and joy for those people. I don't know how it sounds. Maybe again it sounds very cynical and somehow wrong in relation to the views and concepts of certain societies. But to me, it really seemed that death, in that case, was some kind of a gift. This is one of the main concepts that changed my perception of the world, and I stopped perceiving the death as something alien, as something wrong and bad, as if it was something natural, misperceived as alien and wrong. Well, I began to think a lot about the death and tried to put myself in the place of those people. What emotions, what feelings do they experience at these moments? This could be fear for sure and some kind of despair that it is getting over. And while before I used to come to a person and see that the death was approaching them, that they had about 3 days left, and I would see despair in their eyes when they understood that it was getting to its end, I would still mechanically turn them over. Despite the fact that it was painful for them, I'd change all the bandages and would clean the patient. Later, I already stopped doing like this. What is the point of bothering the person to provoke pain in them, while they only have a couple of days left to live? This is not what they need now. I would just sit down next to them and hold their hand. By the way, at death, people press your hand hard. And as I can't do anything special for them, I just keep sitting with them. They're just very lonely, especially people who have been living in these hospitals. They have no one, and it is very important for them to have someone close by who will support them and who will kind of let them go. There's this characteristic look of despair and fear that the person just does not want to live. And a few hours before the actual death, on that day, this look changes, so beautiful and very peaceful, that kind of looking throughout you as if the person is flying somewhere. And thus you understand that it's the end. But if you take the death of old people and people who have suffered for a long time easily and accept their death as something good, as a blessing, then when it comes to children who get sick or children who die, you can't get used to it. You can't accept it. It was the hardest part of my involvement in activities in this monastery. It was difficult to treat children and to help them because, well, first of all, I'm not a doctor. My knowledge of medicine is very limited. So when you see a child and you don't understand at all what's wrong with it, they have some kind of rash on their skin that you've never seen before. You don't know what to do with it. Of course, these sensations, they're terrible. When people count on you, the mother is standing there. She thinks that you understand better. And you come with some creams or tissues to make a bandage. you clean the wound. It's disgusting, but I do it, as it's a terrible feeling when you can't help a child and don't know who can help it. I remember we were frequently visiting a boy who was assumably about 3 years old, and he had some kind of a wild rash all over his body, and we massaged in some cream that supposedly should help, and it seemed to go away. However, soon it all appeared back again, and we did something, tried again, but nothing helped, and it really upset us. Then we just started buying fruits for the family, started giving them water, told them to avoid sugar intake for the boy, and after 3 days he went well. It was an extremely happy moment for me. We were so happy, truly, when the boy's rash just went away. Before, he didn't have much energy, and then he started running around and joking with us, while earlier he would walk around so tired, in a bad mood. Not everyone was doing the same thing. There was a lot of work, there was an orphanage and people were needed there, mostly girls. They looked after children there, they stayed with them. Also, there was a need in veterinarians. They searched for carpenters too, and they needed people who would do construction works. Besides, they needed people who would pack food to give it to those in need. Those with deficit of vitamins would get fruits, for example. There was a lot of different activities. There were people who did nothing at all. There was a lot of them, about half of them. This is not a place where you owe something to someone. There are no obligations due to your stay there, like when as a volunteer you have to work there 5 hours per day, 5 days per week, nothing like that. The whole idea of this place, and not only this place, but Buddhism in general, I'm not going to give you a lecture about Buddhism now, but the main concept of Buddhism is that we all are patients here in this world, and we need to get out of the endless cycle of life from samsara and get to nirvana. And in order to get to this point, we have many different tools. There is no any single specific clear path. So how can a person achieve nirvana? You can just calmly walk down the street, sipping your beer, and all of a sudden you get awakened. This can really happen according to Buddhism. That is, everything depends on your individual qualities from your previous lives. For one, it is given easier. For another one, it is more difficult. As a rule, one has to be reborn many times. Everything is individual. And the other tool is meditation. That is, you focus on something deeply, and it can be anything because everything works according to the same laws. And through this leaf, for example, if you focus on the leaf, you can see the essence of the entire universe, the interconnection of everything. This infinity and all this all goes ahead. And the second effective tool is help and compassion. That is, when you help others, you kind of get rid of your ego. When you get rid of your ego, you become free. You are no longer attached to some of your individual desires, and through this, you can also understand the essence of the universe. It is clear that this explanation is not quite complete, and I did not outline the whole essence of Buddhism. Anyway, that is why we come to this monastery, not as assistants, workers, volunteers, but as Sikh people too. We were given the opportunity to have an experience that will help us get rid of this endless reincarnation and look at the world from different angles. And again, we are all very individual. We need different tools, different approaches to achieve some goals. Therefore, there's no sense to force a person to do something, thinking that it will work for them the same way as for you. This is very ignorant. That's why some meditate, and this practice is useful to them in order to wake up and be cured. Some cut out pus, and someone just rides a motorcycle, drinks beers, hangs out with girls, and through this he also somehow attains that. And someone was just lucky enough to have already gained experience in previous lives. The first 2 months, everyone was going great, and I was very motivated, very enthusiastic. I believed that we were important there, that we were changing something and improving people's lives. I was constantly learning something. I was on a spiritual upsurge, but after 2 months, this energy began to disappear. When you see that your activity, your work, your efforts do not have any long-term progress, then it is tiring, it is upsetting. That is, you come to patients, you apply creams from fungi, the fungi disappear and appear in another place, and then 5 more people with such fungi appear. And the bed sores, that is, you come, clean the bed sore, you massage it, but put on a bandage. A few days later, a bed sore appears in another place. 10 more people get admitted in a terrible condition. You buy mattresses for them, they don't like them, they throw them away because they are used to sleep without mattresses. and bed sores appear again. It's not like being a carpenter. You took the boards, built a table. This table serves people, it helps them, it improves their quality of life. Here it's different, and of course it's hard, especially since there were no new people due to quarantine. There was no fresh power, there were no people who could replace us someday. And we did all that work every day without any rest, and little by little, of course, it became exhausting. As I told, each activity was performed by the same group of people, that is to say, where we were about 12 people who worked with patients, and we started to give in to some kind of depression. For several days or a week, we couldn't get out of bed. We just went out to smoke, have a little chat. We didn't even eat anything, and most of us started drinking a lot. We bought cheap rum with cola, and every evening we would drink and get drunk. To relax, we went to some of the most expensive clubs for the white in the city, where we met girls, went to their home, hung out all night, and in the morning returned to the monastery to change diapers. Now we did that without any emotions, without any interest, without any hope and enthusiasm, just an ordinary job. Once we are finished, we returned to the hostel to smoke, play chess, and this went on and on for several months. We were really burned out and tired. But at the same time, we couldn't give up this work because we felt responsible for the people, for our patients. That is, if we don't go to them now, no one will go, and they will remain lying there in their shit with infectious wounds that will develop and grow. The contrasts were also striking. Like, you get to the most expensive place in the world, you buy yourself a Negroni for $10, you pick up some beautiful French woman at the bar, you tell her what a hero you are and what a good job you do and how privileged we are, the white people, trying to help the locals who suffer. And then, can I get another drink for $10, please? What compassionate and helpful people we are, and here you are in the crowd going to someone's chic hut to smell marijuana, to enjoy whiskey, everyone gets naked, get kissing. By the way, my attitude to sex also changed very much, especially due to working for those people. I mean, you work with disabled people, with the paralyzed, and you really start to appreciate your youth, your strength, your health, beauty, and you want to share it with others in a way. You want to enjoy it while there is an opportunity. Some of the moral principles of the society were simply inappropriate for us. Without all stupid social games, we went into physical contact right away. You should also understand that these people who came there, they are not just simple people. They were complex characters. Well, who will be eager to go to a monastery or live there for 6 months, change diapers for a year and live such a life? Well, not quite normal people. Yes, frankly speaking, I remember one incident that had a strong influence on me. It happened 6 months after my arrival at the monastery. We were returning from another party. I walked around the village, looked at people, and went into one house. A guy invited me. He burned his leg on a motorcycle, and I needed to treat his wound. His mother was in the house too and had a newborn baby. At first, it seemed to me that the child was just born. He was very small, such a small little guy. I asked the guy how old he was, and he said 4 months, but the child really didn't look like 4 months old. He was like a newborn. I did not speak Burmese. I brought over a girl who could translate for me what was wrong with the child, and she told me that the child had a problem with food intake. That is, he had some kind of a block here, and when he consumed breast milk, it was not absorbed. That is, most of it would come out through his nose or through his mouth. Thus, it did not enter the body. The child was unnaturally calm. He did not make any sounds. He hardly moved. I asked whether there were options at all to make an operation, if it was possible to save him, and they told me that an operation was possible, but it was too expensive, as they said. I asked them how much it cost. They said $200 to have an operation so that the food could enter his body. I spent more than $200 on alcohol and parties during 1 week. But here, to save a child, they only needed $200, which really surprised me. I was really surprised that, first of all, this woman did not tell anyone anything. That is, we were in a big place of this temple. There were a lot of foreigners. She could just say that she needed some amount of money to save her child. I told them we should take the child to the hospital and I would give them the necessary amount. Where shall we take him? Give me the telephone number of the hospital. We'll call and organize everything. We'll organize the operation. We called the hospital and they said that they didn't work on weekends or because there was coronavirus. I don't really know. They didn't have places. In general, they said that we could bring him over on Monday. Well, it was Saturday. In general, we agreed for the operation on Monday, but on Sunday, the boy died. The situation really broke me. I mean, I was very tired before that, but after that moment, every day I felt worse and worse, both physically and emotionally. At the same time, friends began to leave from the monastery and we were fewer and fewer each time. Almost all the time I spent in bed. Sometimes I forced myself to get up, to walk around the village, to do my business, and then get back to bed, staying with a joint, a beer. I stopped communicating much, interacting with people. I quite withdrew myself, and I got very sick. I got constantly strongly twisted in my stomach after each meal. I just lay for an hour or two and couldn't help. I had a headache every day and I began to go bald very actively. Also before I had been losing hair, but at that moment my whole bed was covered with hair. I weighed only 60 kg. Usually I weigh 67, 70 kilogram, and fungus mushrooms began to creep all over my body. That is, I had some small parts of fungus and they just spread all over my body. This worried me very much, and at some point I realized that I could no longer bear that. I could no longer live in that place. By the way, the last 6 months this village was closed because of the coronavirus. That is, it was impossible to leave this village. To stay continuously there also greatly affected me, and I decided that it was no longer good for me to be there, that I needed to leave. I needed to get somewhere to have some treatment, leave that country and recover emotionally and physically. In December 2020, I took tickets from Myanmar to Istanbul in Turkey, and after 9 months of being in that country, in a monastery, I flew away. At that moment, I had some good money because at the beginning of the 20th in March, when the coronavirus began, the stock market collapsed. That is, all the shares that cost a certain amount became cheaper by 50 to 70%. Everything collapsed at that moment, and I had some savings and several $1,000s, so I invested in them. And there is more talking about this, which I don't want.
Managing business calls and texts has literally never
Then
been
stop.
easier. Open
When
book
it
tools
goes
and
off, still
iMessage
stop because I'm looking.
Там пожрать, возвращать. Смотрел ютубчик, и так целый год я и провел на самом деле.
So in fact, that year was one of the most difficult and important in my life, and I can't overestimate its significance for me today. Well, it's definitely impossible. If you ask me if I would repeat this experience again, then of course I would. I probably wouldn't go to such a place for such a long time. However, it's very useful to go to some monastery, a hospital, or a nursing home, some boarding school for 2-4 months. And I'm not saying that we do this out of some altruism. In my view, altruism is more like rational, far-sighted egoism. That is, in my understanding, in order to come to some kind of long-term happiness, in order to fill your life spiritually and to be able to look at the life from different angles, one needs to develop compassion in oneself and feeling of mutual assistance. One needs to be able to share. That's why I know that the next time I go to an orphanage, a nursing home, or a place for the disabled, whatever plan I make, it doesn't matter. I understand that I will actually do it for myself. In this regard, I am a very practical person. I wish myself happiness and peace, but in order to achieve that happiness, one needs to make others happy. One needs to fill their lives with love and kindness. Unfortunately, we cannot achieve such goals as happiness being on our own, alone. It simply contradicts our nature, our society, where a person is a very social creature, and in my opinion, without such an interaction and exchange with others, nothing will work.
В любом случае, у вас есть свое мнение на этот счет, можете его оставить в комментарии, мне будет очень любопытно почитать. Спасибо, что посмотрели это видео.
So I was trying to read fast to catch up with him. I don't know if you could understand the key points. You could hear his understanding. Great. Some good points, some mistakes. Haven't you? Good. Okay. I can maybe just conclude so that she gives some idea to breathe also. She cannot translate all this.
Can.
Oh,
And you should conclude, make
Yeah,
conclusion
I conclude.
fast.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, yes.
You should share your understanding about his
Yes, this
experience.
is what I want to do. You ready, Sayali? Ready? So I myself was 2 times in Tabarwa Tanlin, and I always stayed near to Sayadaw, and I followed monks and nuns, and I practiced meditation, and I practiced a lot of question and answer. I went to the section of volunteers for patients only once. No, maybe 2 times. Yeah, maybe 2 times. Because I was feeling I needed to get also the other experience of Tabarwa, not only staying near to Sayadaw. I participated in washing patients, same like the guy described in the video. And because we have a chance to follow Sayadaw on his trips to monasteries and homes of people where he is invited, I was away, so I didn't have the experience like he had. And also I was asking Sayadaw, and he explained that we should be doing all different good deeds. And meditation and learning Dhamma is one of the highest of them. So if we can meditate and learn Dhamma, we should do so. And when I could see this video, I was amazed that some of the concepts that Sayadaw is teaching us verbally and by showing his action, he could understand even without having met Sayadaw even once. Shall I speak fully and then she translates, or by parts? So in my view, this blogger, this traveler, really could understand some of the strong points, but also he has some mistakes in understanding. And for myself, I will talk a little bit about those strong and weak points as I see, but just also to say that from my side, I only have more and more appreciation of what Sayadaw does, not only from the side of Dhamma talks and answering questions, but the concept of tabarwa as well, which really and truly brings to people understanding through their own experience. If we cannot practice meditation, said Sayadaw, we should try to do other good deeds. We can go and help people in need. This was the way that this traveler is sharing to us in the video. First of all, to say about tabarwa, already we notice what we all learn from Sayadaw saying this so often, that we accept all. So even at the time of COVID, when all other monasteries and meditation centers rejected his application to come, tabarwa accepted him. And they kept accepting more people. This was also striking for this traveler, as he expressed. Then, of course, things went not as a Westerner understands and accepts, that while he was on a quarantine, new people were added. It means people who could have disease were mixing up with those who were already staying there for some time alone. This is what we also learn from tabarwa, and we learn to detach also from all rules, how it should be. And he had to detach from that too, without knowing that he has to detach. And then his experience started. And he talks about the death. This is truly one of the crucial concepts for all of us to understand and accept. And tabarwa gives us this experience to see, just like Buddha could see while he was still living his luxurious life. He could see poor, sick, dead. Bhikkhu? Yes, also, yes. Also Buddha could see, how was it called? Sadhu, somebody like sacred person. Yes, some bhikkhu, some ordained person, some not a lay person, but ordained person. And this is what he was seeing too. So all kinds of same experience actually as was happening in Buddha's life, which I myself understand only now talking to you. This is why sharing is so important, because when we share, we understand more. So he experienced to work with people, and in the end he concludes that in order to liberate yourself, one can use different tools, same like Sayadaw was teaching me. One can meditate, one can learn from books, from lectures, or one can do good deeds, and by means of doing good deeds can detach from self, from me, mine, my life. Sayadaw teaches us that we should use our life, use only, not for ourselves, but for others. Like this, we can learn about no self. And I see that it works on his example. At some point, he understood it. And another strong point is that he understood about compassion. He understood about trying to do good deeds when it is possible to do. As he didn't have any medical professional education, but he could see people suffering, people who needed help. He didn't postpone it till later. He didn't disregard. He just kept doing. Even he practiced the repulsiveness of the body, as I understand, repulsiveness, like disgust towards the body, when we can contemplate all of the parts of the body. So he did like this. He said it was disgusting to cut out the wound and to take the pus away. And it was disgusting, and he vomited in the toilet, but he continued doing because he wanted to overcome, to come out of his limits. And this happened, he says. It became easier to do. The more we do, the easier it becomes. He didn't hear the teaching of Sayadaw, but he is expressing it in his own words. I would say the weak point is that he was doing with attachment, because he started to lose his energy. He started to be too much upset when he didn't see the stable results. So, of course, we don't know about impermanence if we don't study Buddhism. Life was showing him the impermanence. If they clean the wound, if they help with the sore bed, he hoped that it will never come back. But disease appeared again in one part of the body or another. He was attached to do, hoping for the result. And then he experienced dukkha because of this attachment, because of grasping. Also, he experienced that doing with attachment is not sure, is never sure, because he already offered his help for the sick child. He organized to admit the child to the hospital and get an operation for him. But we cannot control. We can do only what we can do. And he detached from the money that he uses for bars and clubs. He wanted to help, but we cannot control, and the child died according to his own karma. Because of doing with attachment, he started, the volunteer started suffering, started getting sick by himself. He couldn't endure. Friends also were leaving, and he decided to leave too. But even after some time, when he records this video, he says that he would do that again. So he understands that although it was difficult, it was disgusting, it was also dangerous for his own health, but he understands something bigger than that. Probably this is some feeling of Dhamma, of understanding of Dhamma, that makes him think that he would do this again. Another weak point, wrong understanding, as I see, is that he says he changed his view on sex. And he tells that by seeing all those sick people with wounds, paralyzed, he could appreciate more his own body, his young age, and he took every opportunity to enjoy it, sharing his body with others, with girls. When I was staying in Tanlin, I could hear that volunteers break precepts, that volunteers violate the rules. And here we could have the example of someone who was doing that. So they couldn't detach from their habitual life. They couldn't stop doing like they used to do. And we see that he was mixing up new experience, which was giving him new understanding, with the old habit. Who knows, maybe if he could completely detach from his self and stop his habit, maybe he could endure more. Maybe he could understand more. But even with the experience that he already shares, I'm actually very happy for him that he could get what he got with his experience in Tabarwa. Even never meeting Sayadaw. For me, this is unimaginable. To stay 9 months and never meet. Maybe, as Sayadaw says, we should have enough of paramis to be able to meet him. But definitely he created now some good merits for himself to continue and to understand better. So generally he practiced generosity, he practiced compassion, he practiced, as I said, like meditate, like contemplation on repulsiveness. He practiced detachment a lot, naturally, just by the conditions of Tabarwa. I think this is this side, because there will be no, just avoid this one.
This explanation first.